Well, good evening. It is Sunday, April 19th, 2026, and I'm at my desk. And I hear myself in my laptop, so I know I think I've gotten the audio right this time. Every stream from my desk is certainly another adventure, and we'll call this one another test stream as well. But after being outside yesterday on an absolutely gorgeous day, and having a live stream on my other desk, I have spent today, I'm sorry, on my other channel, I have spent today from before sunrise until now, so probably 13 or 14 hours today, in my home office, organizing files, trying to catch up on so many projects that have been put aside because of the great weather. And today started out a little cold and rainy, but it's actually turned into a beautiful afternoon here in the mid-Atlantic of the United States. But still, I persevered at the desk, and it made me want to sit down and talk about some of the projects I'm cleaning up, and in particular, planning for a place-based video. And I already see I have made a place-based video. I wonder, can I edit the video while this will be another one of those test situations. No, I don't think I can. It's a place-based video, not a placed-based video. So error number one for today. Every one of these streams has been a learning adventure for sure. So I will clean up my poor grammar in the title of this place-based video. So what is a place-based video? If you're joining the channel for the first time, Primary Sources is a channel dedicated to historical and family history research and research methodology. That sounds a little technical. It is in some respects, but I try to make the information really accessible, particularly for those who are just starting out with family research or historical research of any kind. It's not daunting. It shouldn't be too overwhelming to know how to get started in the right way. I'm doing air quotes, there are historians out there who, just do their own thing and don't follow the good rules of research, the rules of evidence, as we call it, the genealogical proof standard, proper citations, and good sound research methodology. So today, what I thought I would do is to kind of walk through the process I used when planning for a video that traces one of my ancestors' journey through Georgetown on September 6th, 1862, as his unit was making its way from Northern Virginia through our nation's capital and eventually into Maryland, and what would culminate at the battles of South Mountain and Antietam. And what I've been doing over the last, it's got to be 8 years now, is trying to find time is the hard part. Trying to walk every single step that he took during his 4 years of service in the Union Army during the United States Civil War, and to do research along the way and try to find the places that he saw along the way. So I'll talk today about the Georgetown video. Now let me see if I can switch a little bit. Yay, switch between backgrounds. That seems to have worked. And let's talk about planning. So planning begins, as all good historians and all good genealogists do, is to gather every single source possible. And you start by creating the list of sources that you might want to use. For genealogical research, particularly, your first stop is with every living relative and gathering as much information as possible from them. In the case of my ancestor, no one knew they had a Civil War soldier in their genealogy, and so there was no information whatsoever to gain from any of my living relatives. I discovered that I had a Civil War ancestor while working on my genealogy and doing all the things you need to do when you find ancestors in certain periods of time, whether that's in the World War II era or the American Revolution era, or in this case, the Civil War era, and seeing if those individuals who generally fit the age range for someone who may have served, to look up those records. And I did. I found them for my ancestor. I found lots of records. And that led me to create maps. And those maps document every place he was during his 4 years of service. And so this particular piece of his journey is through Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And I'm documenting, when we talk about planning, I gathered my resources and did my research and found where he was just about every day during the Civil War through unit records and a pension file. He was injured in service, so that means he had an extensive pension file and so many, many more resources. And what I wanted to do then was to photograph and video the march he would have taken through Washington, D.C. and Georgetown, and in particular, find those buildings that exist today that were there in 1862. And so my first place, let's see if I can do this, present, share screen, share image file. Let's see, I didn't do a slide right now and I didn't do an image. So I'm going to try to share a particular window on my screen, and I'm hoping this will work because it's a Word document. So I will wait just a second to see if this pops up. Fantastic. All right, so you're seeing my screen, which is always slightly dangerous, but I think I've made it safe. So when I'm planning any type of place-based research, not just mapping out a route, I search for the property records for the state, city, town, locality that I'm researching. And in this case, we're in Washington, D.C., we're in Georgetown. And so I've gone to History Quest. And I think I've demoed that on this channel or my other channel. DC History Quest is a GIS product that will show properties in Washington, D.C. color-coded based on how old they are and how far the records go back. So what I began with was just this base map. I added this green line with these arrows to document the particular part of his march. Now, as you can see, this is just a few blocks. This is like a mile, maybe not even a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile from essentially Rock Creek west on Pennsylvania Avenue, west on M Street, which was called Bridge Street at the time, turning north on Wisconsin Avenue, just up to Dunbarton Street. This is probably not even a mile. So you can imagine if I'm documenting 4 years of Civil War service, I have a heck of a lot of these little tiny maps. And on my other channel, my research log channel, Sandy Q, this is where I've posted some of the videos that I've put together, including some really bad first attempts at actually holding my DSLR camera on the dashboard of my car as I drove some of the routes. There are some places where I can't walk, and so, even though I stay off the major highways and I try to walk on the actual historic roads, still there are places I can't walk. Those early videos are pretty terrible. But I think I finally, after several years, found the kind of video that I want to make. And that is a succession of photo and video taken while walking or, from a stationary position. And that's what I did for the Georgetown video. But I began with this map, this DC History Quest map. And I zoomed into the area that I am interested in. And you can see all of these. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. You can see the different colors. The different colors represent the ages of the current buildings on those sites. The darker the building, the darker the rectangle or the shape, the older the building is. So you can see there are some bright yellow buildings. Those are relatively new, definitely 20th and 21st century buildings. The orange, as you go into kind of a maize color and then an orange, dark orange, red, dark red, and then really, really dark red that on the computer looks purple. What might not be showing is, let's see if I can zoom in even further. This building at the middle, this little tiny L, it says Old Stone House in the yard area here. This is called the Old Stone House. It was built between 1755 and 1756. It is the oldest building remaining on its original foundation. Now I'm saying 56, it may be 60, maybe it's either 1756 or 1766, and I apologize because it's just gone out of my brain there. Pre-revolution for that home. It's still there. It's still on its original foundation. It is part of the Rock Creek Park area managed by our National Park Service. And the garden and the house are open to the public during visitor hours. So you can check out the Old Stone House. And we'll see a picture of it in just a minute. But what I wanted to highlight was the dark color on this map, indicating this is one of the oldest homes. This is the oldest home. Now, these two just to the right of it are the Loughborough houses. Those are also pre-1800s. And then the three homes at the intersection of 30th Street and M Street are the Thomas Sim Lee buildings, and they also predate, are pre-1800. But I won't dwell too much on this slide because I will actually show you the pictures of these beautiful properties. But I wanted to show how I started my research. I started my research. Whoops, and I've accidentally somehow moved. There we go. Don't want to do that. I started my research at that website, History Quest. Now, immediately when I start doing research, I start keeping a log. That's going to become my documentation. And so this Word document was the start. And originally, this plot right here was the only thing in this document, along with the link to get to this map. And again, I added the green line to show my path. I think it's really important, and I have many, many maps that I have printed off from Google Maps or drawn as I've gone off on my walks. And some of you who have followed my live adventures on my other channel, you hear me flapping the note page that I keep with me or the map that I keep with me. It's not so that I know where I'm going. Of course, I do try to include some notes about different properties. It's so that I can record when I come home. If I've deviated from the path, I want to make sure I remember where I was. I don't want to duplicate research, and that's why it's so important to keep a good log, not just to record your findings, but also to save time so that you know what you've looked at. But also, just personally, I want to know where I've been. And my note here says it was on the 27th of August in 2022. Wow, that's a long time ago, almost 4 years ago. I walked from Pennsylvania Avenue near Rock Creek across the Rock Creek Bridge to M Street, and I photographed each block from there to Wisconsin Avenue. I then turned north and followed Wisconsin for a short distance. It was a glorious, clear, sunny day with little traffic in the early morning hours. This is reflected in the amazing lighting in the color in the photos. Yeah, I was kind of proud of my photos that day, and the route is documented in the graphic below. This way, future researchers can see what I've done and see where I was when I took those photos. All right, enough on the map. Now, when I make my research notes, I include citations for future researchers to give me credit for my research. I am a nut for citations. And most importantly, if you're using my research, whether I publish this in an article or in a YouTube video or however else anyone comes across my research, I want to make sure that they see that they have the information right in front of them to be able to cite this source appropriately. So I've included, using the Evidence Explained, the Elizabeth Shown Mills Bible, I should say, for genealogists and historic researchers. Elizabeth Shown, Shown Mills. The book is Evidence Explained. There is a fourth edition recently published. I like the third edition. The third edition has some quick research guides that were removed in the fourth edition, I think because the fourth edition is just so thick, because it really started leaning into online and digital sources. But you'll see I've provided the first citation, which should be the one in the bibliography. And it would be my name, which is blacked out, the name of my ancestor, project, blacked out, Civil War Journey, 6 September 1862, March through Georgetown, M Street Field Work on 27 August 2022. That's the name of the source. The description is property report with a photo index. It was completed in January 2023, and it is privately held by the author. This hasn't been published, but someday, who knows? Who knows where it'll go? If someone encounters this, they can at least cite their sources correctly. I've also provided the first reference note, which is usually a little bit abbreviated, but because essentially this is a short version anyway, the subsequent note would refer to the page in the document. And then I always put a snooty little note on all of my documents, anything I publish and anything I produce, that lets folks know that they can use it for their historical research and for personal research, but they may not publish my works. Those who use my research in any form whatsoever must add the following credit to the source citation. So after citing the source appropriately, as you see above, you must add derived from the, and the name of the file, genealogy research files of me, accessed on the date that the researcher found my information, copyright to all photos retained by the creator except as otherwise noted, meaning I use my own photos unless I say it belongs to someone else. Most of the photos in my research products are taken by me because I am a field researcher. I also advise users not to copy, share, post, or save without proper citation and attribution. This comes up on sites such as Ancestry, where early in my genealogical research journey, I posted everything like a good researcher does. And although I cited my sources correctly, people who copied and had access to my materials did not. Now, Ancestry is supposed to be an open, big family tree so that everyone can learn from each other. But the danger there is that if someone is not as thorough as you, even if you are the most thorough researcher, they can use your information in the wrong way. And I've had individuals take my research and attach them to the wrong family. And even though I proved to them that their uh, individuals, even though names match, are not the same people, they refused to make a change. Also, I want to make sure that my work is 100% accurate. And at times, if I do have to change a conclusion or update a photo, maybe I've made a mistake. Individuals who just take my work without attribution or connecting it to my tree won't have the benefit of those updates. So a little word of caution on using Ancestry. Ultimately, I did have to make my tree private because of one particular individual who attached his tree or my tree to his. And although we share the same last name, we are not related. And I proved to him that the relationships he created were incorrect. He even had my grandfather marrying his sister, his own sister, which made no sense. Really sloppy people out there. But I try to at least give a nice warning here. And then I also include my contact information. So, contact me for more information if you're using my research. So let's get into the nitty gritty and the really deep, boring details about this particular study. So beginning close to Rock Creek, what I ended up doing was just highlighting those structures that were present in um, I'm going to say this. Um, I'm focused on all structures of historic significance. Let me put it that way. Fumbling over my words here. I don't want to just toss away historic structures just because they weren't there on the day, September 6, 1862. So the pieces of the map include all of the buildings of historic significance derived from the DC History Quest map, including some photos. However, I will highlight in particular those buildings that were there and are still there today on September 6, 1862. Why? That's the whole point of the adventure, to try to see what my ancestor saw and all of his comrades saw when they were marching through Georgetown. Now, they began their morning in Northern Virginia, in Alexandria. They crossed at the time, the Long Bridge. It's not the same Long Bridge today. There is a Long Bridge crossing from Virginia into Washington, D.C. It's a railroad bridge today. Back then, it was for all types of traffic. The pylons are still there, but the bridge itself is it's not the same bridge. The railroad bridge today that is a 14th Street bridge is not, I'm sorry, that is called the Long Bridge is not that Long Bridge. So you can go to the Long Bridge, but it's not the Long Bridge. Anywho, I started there. I walked through Washington, D.C. He would have walked up 14th Street, past what we know today as the Willard Hotel. It was called Willard's Hotel back then. Turn left, march past the White House, march down Pennsylvania Avenue into Georgetown. So in the mid-morning of September 6, 1862, he was right here, this little arrow here. As he walked west on Bridge Street, it wasn't called M Street back then, west on Bridge Street, this area was developed, but none of the structures that are there today on the block ending at 28th Street Northwest, none of those buildings are there today. However, I did take a photo of the building right on the corner, and you can see 2701 M Street. I took the photo. It's not, it wasn't there in 1862, but it was there prior to 1900. And I made a page for each segment, I'm sorry, for each side of the block. So north side and south side of M Street, and east side and west side of Wisconsin Avenue. So this is the 2801 block of M Street, the north side of M Street between 28th and 29th Street. Also, no structures that are there today were present on the 6th of September 1862, but I photographed the entire block. And so I have a record of the structures as they are. I won't say today. This was in August of 2022, and there's been a significant turnover in the businesses in that area. So there are different businesses inhabiting these buildings, but the buildings are still there, but they weren't there in 1862. Now we'll turn to the south side of the 2800 block of M Street. Same thing, no structures present on September 6th of 1862. You can see though that the northern boundary is actually, I'm saying the south of M Street, but it's really Pennsylvania Avenue, because where M Street is, it's just one of those many, one of many of the triangle parks of Washington, D.C. But here, these structures were not present in 1862, but I did photograph them. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Got some great photos. I remember this day. It was hot as blazes. I was out well before 7 a.m. I had to wait a little bit just for the sun, but there was no traffic. So I was able to stand in the middle of the street, in the middle of M Street, if you can imagine, and take these photos. Now we finally get one. When are we going to get a structure that was present in 1862? We will get one in the 2901 block, which is the north side of M Street between 29th and 30th Streets. And what I did was not only take a photo of the building, but I pulled the property information out of the DC History Quest site. So this building, 2917 M Street, at the time Bridge Street, is 1,210 square feet. Oh, no, that's the city square. Correct me. That's the city square. That's not the feet. What am I thinking? It's not the square footage. It's the city square, 1210, lot 0205, built in 1859. And the source for that is a wonderful resource, the Boschke map of Washington, D.C. This building, it still looks this way today. It's painted black on tan. It's like it's deeper than beige up close. It's a simple 3-story structure, 3 across. It was originally built as a commercial structure, and it is still a commercial structure today. And I'm disappointed I don't have a straight front-on photo of this building. It does look a little crooked because just to the right of me was construction, and I could not get right in front of this building. A little disappointed in that. Now looking on the north side, so this is the 2901 north side. But looking at the entire north side, beginning to the east and working my way west, these buildings that you see, the first 2 photos that I'm showing, they look so old, and they have a historic marker on them. They're just not old enough. They were not here in 1862. And then I have some photos of houses and structures as you move west. And then you can see these last two photos include that small black on beige building that is the one that was present in 1862. And as you can see, I really just couldn't get a straight on photo. I couldn't get right in front of it because on this photo, it's just to the left, and on the other photo, it's just to the right. A big ditch and a lot of cones that my friend Daryl would like. My friend Daryl likes traffic cones. Now let's move to the south side, 2900 South Side. No structures present in 1862. Now you may be thinking, wow, Georgetown is quite a historic area in Washington, D.C., and it really is. Just doesn't have that many buildings dating back to 1862 specifically. Just after that time, many of these buildings are definitely pre-1900, just weren't here in 1862. Now, what we do see in this block, in this beautiful first photo, is the Alfred Lee Grain and Feed Store. Alfred Lee was a free African American who ran a grain and feed store in this beautiful 4-story, just magnificent, huge corner unit built in the 1680s, not in the 1660s. So it wasn't here when the troops marched down Bridge Street. I've taken a photo of that historic marker, and I've taken photos of this block, which is a true row house block. As you can see, these houses are very similar, and I keep saying houses, structures, because they probably were also commercial structures at the time. They're very similar, except for the one on the corner that is a larger, taller 3-story on the corner. Now, this is the good block. The 3001 block of M Street, the north side. This is where we have the old stone house, and this is where we have a number of historic structures that were standing in 1862. Specifically, they were here on September 6th, 1862. Now this page, I got probably a little carried away on this page. Probably should have divided it into 2 pages, but I wanted one page that included the map and the description of each property. So let's actually starting from the right side, 3001 M Street Northwest. And you can see this one built in 1792. This is the Thomas Sim Lee building. Thomas Sim, I believe, or Thomas Sim Lee, was a governor of Maryland. Georgetown used to be part of Maryland prior to being incorporated with the federal capital in 1790. And so Thomas Sim Lee, or Thomas Sim, I can't remember if Lee is a combination of family names or not. This is one structure that has since been subdivided into 2 commercial businesses. And how do we know? Well, there's a great cue in looking at the chimneys. And if you can see the chimneys bounding a property, that generally lets you know that the property's been divided. You can see the chimney to the right side and the chimney to the left side. Gives you an idea of the bounds of the original property. Now I'm going down to the left, but to the bottom of the page here, but right next door at 3007 M Street, also built in 1792. And again, you see 4 windows, 4 across, 2 windows at the top, chimneys bounding either side. Today there are 3 doorways into this building. The building has been subdivided into 2, but there's another doorway probably leading up to an apartment upstairs. So this has been turned into 3 or more different properties within this one building built in 1792. Continuing west to 3011 M Street. This one built in 1790. And it has the same style as the other buildings on this block. I'm going to zoom back up to the map, and you're going to see these are the dark burgundy colors. Next to it, though, we have an orange and then a bright yellow. So we know that's relatively new. The structures in between all of these orange and yellow colors, none of them were present in September 1862. The next one, right here, 3037 M Street, was present in 1862. And these are the Loughborough houses. Loughborough, Loughborough, built in 1806. So not the same style as those built in 1790 and 1792 respectively, but close. And you can see these are two distinct houses, residences at the time. These were residences, but on the left, that residence has been divided into two. So 2 residences, now 3 separate properties. And then finally, this L on the corner, it's not on the corner, it's actually in the middle of the block. This L at 3049 M Street is the old stone house. And yep, 1765. I think originally I said 55. 1765. This is on the National Register of Historic Places. This is the oldest residence on its original foundation in Washington, D.C., and it's managed by the National Park Service. But this is my research record, right? So I'm not just providing this information to document old houses. This information is relevant to research about my ancestor, and that's why I'm focusing on those properties that were here on September 6, 1862, so that when I walk down this block, my ancestor saw these buildings. My ancestor saw the old stone house. Now, the 3001 block of M Street, as you can imagine, I was very interested in because there were so many historic structures remaining from September of 1862. So I took a lot of photos of this block. And with no traffic, I was in the middle of the street and there was no construction on this street. So I took many, many photos. And once I'm done going through this document, I'll go into my indexing system so you can see how I name my photos. Not saying my convention is the best, but it's always good to name your photos in the best way to be able to search them later. So many photos of the properties, as well as the historic markers around the old stone house and the historic plaques on some of the homes. On to the next half of the block. This was just one half of the block between 30th Street and 31st Street. This side, however, the western half, no historic structures present, or remaining, I should say. Sounding like I'm traveling through time. Remaining from September 6, 1862. But I took photos anyway. Why? Because this can become an historic record for someone else's use. My research is relevant to my ancestor, but I'm documenting the entire blocks, and maybe someone else has a reason to have a photo of these buildings. And I'm happy to help their research as long as they follow the rules about citing and respecting and attributing my work. Again, not trying to sound snooty or possessive about that. I just want to make sure that the historic record is accurate. On to the 3000 block south side, just across the street from what we looked at no historic structures. And you'll note my note here, um, construction, no photos taken. There in the part of this document from DC History Quest reflecting some of the structures here in yellow. Actually, some of those structures were being torn down while I was researching. And so no photos were taken that would match this map because construction was going on. On to the 3,000 block south side continued over next door to 31st Street. There is one building. It is surrounded by trees, and I couldn't get a picture of the building front on or even from the side. But this building was built in 1840, and it is still there today. And it was there when my ancestor marched past it on September 6th, 1862. More photos of that block. Down to the next block, north side, no structures from September 6th, 1862, but some beautiful architecture, absolutely beautiful architecture. And a fire insurance plaque on the window or an easement. This was some kind of marker I hadn't seen before. It's an eagle. And I don't think there were any words on it, but not back to September of 1862. This block has quite a mix of architectural styles. And when we take a look at the south side, as dense as it is with so many buildings, none of them dating from 1862. On to the north side of the corner with Wisconsin Avenue. Now we're going to turn north and start to head up Wisconsin Avenue toward Maryland, but this building on the corner, the northwest corner of M Street and Wisconsin Avenue, this beautiful large square building was built in 1850. And so this building was present in September 1862. It had to be a business of some sort, a big bank, an insurance company, something of that effect, because it's a big one for that time. And now we turn north on Wisconsin Avenue, and a really interesting building. See this dark burgundy building tucked away. See, it's tucked in the corner where Wisconsin Avenue veers sharply to the west. And I couldn't take a picture of it because it's completely surrounded by trees. There's a front yard in front of this property. And so I couldn't get a picture. I didn't want to climb up the steps. But because it's on the National Register of Historic Places, and there are plenty of photos of it because it was the Female Union Benevolent Society, as documented by photos in the Library of Congress, as well as the National Register. So we do have pictures of it, and it looks like this, except today the trees are much taller. But this building would have been here in September 1862. And you can see, again, this is, I'm making research notes as I go. I'm adding my maps. This is just a Word document. Some people do the same in OneNote. I can't stand OneNote. But this is, just keeping my ongoing notes and organizing as I go, and also copying my citations. This is the citation from the Library of Congress for that photo that I used. And then more photos of this block. And another building here on the west side where Wisconsin Avenue is angling on the corner with N Street. is a building called Forest Hall, built in 1859. Great little shops, little cafes all around the area. And then on the corner, just across N Street, now on the southwest corner, two buildings. The one on the corner, really interesting. I have to think this was a pub or a tavern. No, I lie. It says Citizens Federal Savings and Loan. Oh, this is the one that confused me. Citizens Federal Savings and Loan, built in 1804. This is not a bank that looks like a bank to me. So those who have seen my wanderings on my other channel, you know I like the architectural style of old banks. This doesn't look like one. Looks like it should be a tavern. And the one next to it, built in 1859 at 1304 Wisconsin Avenue. And some great photos here. Now there is a big, beautiful hotel here on this block. Wasn't here in 1862. And across the street, this little tiny, let me see if I can zoom way in on this. Across the street, you see that little tiny hut? In the Baltimore, Montgomery County, PG County, Washington, D.C. area, and probably other places on the East Coast. There were hamburgers from Little Tavern. And it was a white building, little tiny building like this. This is one of them with a green roof. And this is one of the remaining Little Tavern buildings. It's not a Little Tavern anymore. I forget the name of the business there. But there's also one literally 2 blocks away within walking distance within Georgetown. So there are 2 Little Tavern taverns that remain just in Georgetown. And there are others throughout the East Coast. There's a website devoted to little taverns that can tell you where they are. But there's 2 in Georgetown. So that was a really belabored wander through my research notes that are the basis for a video. So starting with those notes, let's see if this works. Going back here. Starting with those notes, loading up all those videos, I use Canva, loading up all those photos into Canva, recording a script, and following that map is how I created a video. And I'll put the link to the video in the description to this video so you can take a look at it and see the end product. But I did just want to spend a minute also sharing my naming convention for my photos. So let's see if I can do a share screen again. And, nope, not yet. Cancel. Try again. All right. Share screen again. I shouldn't say anything. This stream is going relatively well compared to some of my old ones. I create a separate folder for every day that I'm out adventuring, and then I subdivide that folder. This is my way of finding photos by date and by subject. And so the folder I created is 2022 08 AUG 27. 2022, obviously the year. Now, when you name your month, you have to put the number of the month ahead of the name of the month. Otherwise, you will end up with, instead of January, February, March, you will end up with April, August as your first 2 months because alphabetization. So you put an 08 in front of August. Always use 2 digits Why? Because if you put a 1 in front of January and then you put an 11 in front of November, the computer wants to put November 1st. So put 01 in front of January, 02, 03, 04, etc. 08. Aug 27 is the date, and then my subject. Now, if on a day I'm in more than one place, after the date, I put an A or a B, and then my subject. Why? Again, sorting. If I visit Georgetown first thing in the morning and then go to Alexandria, the computer's going to want to sort it as Alexandria first because A comes before G. So just think about this, the way you name your folder and subfolders so that alphabetization or sorting in ascending and descending order will work to your advantage. So my folder for this activity is Georgetown space M space Street ST. Now, when I'm naming photos, this is really hard when you take 300 and 400 photos a day to quickly sort and name your photos, indexing and cataloging. But it's to everyone's benefit to do it quickly. I use 3 digits when I start to name my photos. Now, I know for sure, even if I've taken 400, that I won't have more than 100 of the same subject, right? But still, I use 3 digits. It's just a habit. And so I begin. In this case, because I'm working with properties, I have an address. So this first one is 2022-08 Aug 27, the date. Georgetown, M Street, that's my subject. 001 is the number of the photo, and then the address, 2701. Now, why didn't I put 2701 first and then 001? Because alphabetization, I don't necessarily want them in the order of the street numbers, even though it might happen that way. I want them in the order that I took the photos. That's just me. You'll see the next one here is 003, so there must be a 002 that I deleted at some point. Now, if I have exactly the same subject, here the 2800 block of M Street, you'll see I have 004, 004A, 004B. It's essentially the same photo, but I've given it an A and a B. And when I edit my photos, I might use one of these photos and then zoom or crop or edit. I will leave the original index name. I will add at the end, edit or zoom, 1, 2, 3, and I will save it as a copy. I always keep my original photo until I've gone through a bunch of times. And if I decide I don't need them, I don't need them. Now, I also shoot raw. So in this file somewhere, and I'm pretty judicious about it, there are probably some raw files in here. I don't keep all my, I only keep, DSLR photos are so good nowadays. You don't, I only need the raw photo if it's a photo that I might make a portrait of or a picture of to hang. I might reproduce or do some really fancy editing or filtering on or something like that. But I'm typically not keeping raw photos. Take up too much space. But that's how I name my building. And sometimes I want to put, here we have the name of the building. This is picture number 063B. The address is 3037 to 3039, and it is the Loughborough House built in 1806. Put as much information as possible in the name of the photo so you can search it easily. if I'm looking for the old stone house, I want to find the old stone house, and I want to be able to search and find. And here I have the name of the old stone house on the photos. Here you'll see a really long name, M Street, photo 110B, intersecting with the 1300 block of Wisconsin Avenue, and this one is shot raw. That's a really long name of a file, but I can find the file if I need to find it. Phew. Well, that was quite a boring walk through part of my process for planning for a place-based video. There is an organization called the Society for One Place Studies. If you're beyond beginner in place-based research, check out the Society for One Place Studies. They are the expert level organization for researching and publishing on a very specific place. It can be a city, a small town, it can be one building. I've published a place-based study on one part of one square of Washington, D.C., the site of the current Embassy of Australia, and I've done the entire history of that plot of land and published it with the Society for One Place Studies and published a YouTube video on it. Well, everyone, this was a impromptu video to chat about a place and a methodology, and it's also a stream to practice my live streaming skills. And I'm still learning. Thank you for your patience. I will put the link to the product of this research in the description to this video. I hope everyone has a really productive week ahead of you. Best of luck in all of your research. Remember to cite your sources.